A few housekeeping items to go over before I flip things over to Jill. Today's webinar is being recorded. It will be archived in our online community, Montclair Connect, and you'll have access to it via email. Feel free to ask any questions. If we do not address them during the webinar, we'll be sure to leave some time at the end for questions, and if there's any follow-up information, we'll be sure to get the information to you. We'll be asking some interactive poll questions throughout, so please participate and help us better facilitate the webinar. You'll also receive a survey asking for your feedback, so please fill that out. We'd love to hear from you so we can better tailor these moving forward. And for more information on alumni relations, you can visit our website at montclair.edu/alumni. And now I will flip things over to Jill.
Good afternoon and welcome. Can you hear me okay, Stacy?
Yes, I can.
Great. So I'd like to start by first thanking Stacy and the Office of Alumni Relations. I'm excited to do this. I think Adulting 101 is important and very much needed. So today I'm going to be focusing on financial literacy in terms of relating to Adulting 101. So what are we going to cover? Establishing credit, paying off credit, credit scores, savings account, and resources. So we're going to cover these 5 bullets in a lot of detail. And I know it may be a lot of information at different times, but I really want to make sure that you get as much information as I can share with you. So again, hello and good afternoon. My name is Jill Ploskanka. I oversee the Center for Leadership Development at Montclair State, and I'm an alumna from 2005. So I've been with the university ever since. I'm also a business consultant where I focus on training, professional development, and leadership coaching. And I'm an avid traveler who flies for free because of my credit card. The one thing I am not is a financial advisor. And I want to highlight that because a lot of the information you're going to hear today, you can definitely get from an accountant or a CPA or a financial advisor. But we wanted to give you the platform and the foundation of information so that you can then talk to an advisor if you need to. So the format and the takeaways for today. So as I shared, there's going to be a strong amount of information. Take what you need. I'm going to also share some personal advice and share why this is so important to me. And then I'm going to end with some resources, and you can also see on the right side that those are there for you right now. The best way to take away from today's presentation, tune in based on the topics of interest. So for example, if you're more interested in credit cards, credit scores, you'll want to tune in more now. If you're more interested in savings and options to save, you're going to want to tune in a little bit more later. Second, take notes where you can and research on your own. Not everything that I present and share with you is everything out there. So definitely conduct your own research. So before I go on, take a look at the right. You're going to see the poll is now open. Which topics are you most interested in for this webinar? So please take a look to the right to the poll to answer that question.
Thanks, Jill. And I'm just looking at as the results are coming in, it looks like so far in the lead is ways to save and improving overall financial literacy. So folks, will give you just another minute or so to take the poll, and then we'll move on so that Jill can share her tips with us. All right. Looks like the clear winner here actually became overall financial literacy, Jill.
Great. Well, I'm glad to know that we're on the right track because you're going to get a lot of financial literacy in this entire presentation. So let's get started. So I want to share this quote because for me, this quote spoke volumes to where I was about 10 years ago. I felt out of control financially. I had no knowledge that a credit score was going to be so critical in my future, and I needed to make some changes. And so what I started to do was lead myself financially through using credit cards wisely, opening a savings account that earned interest. I refinanced my loans and consolidated them. And after college, like many of you, I left with 5 open credit cards at 22% interest, and I had a high amount of student loans, and I was overwhelmed. So it took me a lot of time to gain that control. So I use this quote because I really want you to gain control financially, and a lot of the information I share will support that. So take a look at these blurbs on the right. Are you buying a car? Are you going to be looking for a home? Do you need car insurance? Maybe you're going into a job or you have a job in finance or law enforcement. These are all jobs that will look at your credit score or your credit report, and they also impact you for the next 7 years. And so throughout this presentation, you're going to hear me use 7 years often because I want you to look ahead 7 years, but I also want you to think about the negative factors that could be on your credit report, which will stay on there for 7 years. So we're going to start with establishing credit, and this for me is really the foundation to financial literacy. And you're going to see throughout this presentation there's little stars next to certain bullets. Those are the bullets I'm going to focus on, but feel free to read everything. So some credit decisions today that impact the future, department store cards. So really beware of those sign-up offers. So think about the last time you went into a store and you were offered 20% if you sign up today for a department store card. Or even on Amazon, they're offering their own credit card when you go to check out. Sign up today and you can save $40 off the offer you're about to purchase. These are sign-up offers and they're meant to get you to sign up immediately. Be really aware of them because these are decisions you kind of want to make on your own time and not in the moment when you're thinking, yes, it could be great to save 20%. Second, college student loans. They're typically one of the first ways that a lot of us will start to establish credit. They'll be stuck with us for the next 10, 20, 15, 30 years, however many years. And that does help our credit, but at the same time, it impacts our credit. And the last thing I want to highlight is a mortgage. When you're going to apply for a mortgage, or some of you may have a mortgage, you know that credit is going to be the deciding factor what type of a mortgage you qualify for and for how much. So establishing credit is really important, and that's why, again, I want you to think to the future, what will I need and what do I have today? So we're going to go to a second poll. How many of you have already established credit based on some of the factors above?
All right, we'll give folks just a minute or so to take this poll here. Looks like overwhelmingly the response is yes so far. I'll share the results in a moment. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them our way and we'll do our best to get to them. You'll also see that we do have some resources available that you can download, some PDFs that will include some of the references that Jill's making, and we will also share them with you after. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll and share it with you guys so you can see the results. So it looks like the majority of you, yes, do have established credit.
Excellent. So that gives me good insight as we go forward. So I'm going to start with some personal advice and best practices. And for me, this is what really changed why I operate the way I do now financially. So first, I consider all credit factors today, and I'm thinking ahead again 7 years. And if I hadn't started to look at this about 10 years ago, I wouldn't be in the place I am now to potentially buy a home. It would have been a lot more challenging. Second, only borrow what you need. There's going to be an opportunity, and if not now, maybe in the future, you can take out a personal loan, or you can refinance your home, or maybe you can ask for a higher mortgage so you can do some work around the house and update your house. Only borrow what you absolutely need. And I remember even in college, that was an option. You could request more funds for books, room, and board. And I always took out as much as I could, and now I'm paying back that absolute maximum amount that I could have taken, and I'm paying interest. Third, pay off your cards monthly. I think that's a really challenging thing for many people to do, and it took me about 5 years to actually be able to do that. But by paying off my credit cards monthly, I'm not paying any interest, and I'm only charging what I absolutely have to and what I want to. I'm only spending what I need to. Fourth, make changes to your credit by using your credit report and score. I think this is probably the strongest statement on here, and I say that because the more aware you are of your credit report and your credit score, the better decisions you'll be able to make in the future. And lastly, set up auto pay where you can. I've heard of too many stories where people say, "Oh, I missed my payment by a day," or "I forgot to hit submit on my payment and now it went to my credit report." It's a really good idea to set up auto pay, and for those of you who are nervous about changes to those bills, make time, check those bills, and set up auto pay to make sure they're paid on time. I'm going to go into credit cards, and I want to highlight credit card factors to consider and also looking at hidden benefits. And so I'm going to highlight three areas. The first being rewards. I want you to think about what rewards do you want in a credit card? And I'm sure many of you may have had a credit card or you have credit cards now, but think about the rewards and do it strategically. So, for example, if you travel a lot, and I travel as much as I can, I look for two credit cards, and I only carry two, that have strong travel rewards, and they both offered strong travel sign-up bonuses. Second, going right into that, look for a good sign-up bonus and not the departmental store 20% or you can save 10% today. Look for a really strong sign-up bonus and do it at the right time. Maybe right now you want the Chase Sapphire Reserve card, but they're only offering 50,000 points. And this is true, not that long ago they offered 100,000. So look for sign-up bonuses, but be strategic. Today may not be the best day. And the last factor I want to highlight is annual fees. There are credit cards out there that have fees up to $1,000 and down to zero. Look for a credit card that offers a fee that you are comfortable with, but also you feel is worth paying for. And if you look to the right, look for hidden benefits. A lot of people may not know that many of these bullets come automatically with your credit card, and those are some of the things that you're paying for with an annual fee. So what I want to highlight is the car rental insurance. This is one of my favorite perks to my Chase Sapphire Reserve. And I say that because I travel often, as I've now shared multiple times, and I rent cars typically. By having this hidden benefit, I'm not paying for car insurance at all, and that saves me $11 to $15 per day for every trip that I need to rent a car. The second is medical assistance. If you're ever away and something unexpectedly happens, they offer medical assistance typically up to $100,000 or $200,000 and includes getting you back home safely, especially if you're outside the United States. And the last I want to highlight is the airport lounge access. I like this because it's a savings of $25 to $50 per person, and you can go in with a guest. So, for example, I can go into Air France, their lounge at JFK, and they offer free meals, free drinks, free Wi-Fi, a comfortable space, and often many lounges will even give you access to locker rooms with showers. So there's a lot of hidden benefits out there, but make sure you look for them in the fine print. These are not often promoted. We're going to go into a short video on APR, and then we're going to come back and go further into credit cards.
If folks are having a hard time hearing the audio, we'll share this after the fact as well.
Okay. What I can do. So for those of you who may be having a hard time, we can just go here and start it over.
Jill, I think folks are still having a hard time, so I think we can just share the video for folks to reference after the webinar so we can
Sounds
use
good.
our time wisely.
Absolutely. Okay. So the only reason I wanted to show that video and get you some insight, whether you carry a balance or not makes a really big difference on how you decide what the best credit card is for you. So I'm going to highlight three areas, three wonderful resources that I use and I found value in. So first is NerdWallet. I think this is a very great tool if you want to compare credit cards, look at sign-up bonuses, decide who's offering the most generous rewards, and also thinking about, do you want a small sign-up fee? I'm sorry, not a sign-up fee, annual fee, or do you want a one in the middle, somewhere around $4.50, depending on those perks. And if you look to the right, the points guy is very much known for travel. And what he does is find you the best credit cards, typically offering you the best rewards in terms of travel rewards. So it may be points, free flights, companion airfare. But he looks very carefully at what is the best sign-up bonus and what's the best reward in terms of travel credit cards. And the last is a good tool to use to kind of round out all of the tools. It compares everything. If you want to cash back, if you want low interest, travel rewards, and also if you're thinking of transferring a balance. For those of you who may have a card right now saying, you know what, I don't want to pay 22% anymore. Can I transfer it? Compare cards. This website will help get you good options. So I've started talking about these, and I just want to highlight them. The two cards I've chosen, and I do encourage you to pick them very personally based on your needs, are based on travel. So I look for cards that offer travel perks. They're globally accepted without fees. I also look for rewards that come in terms of cash and travel. I definitely look for those hidden benefits, and I'm always looking for the best sign-up bonus. So for example, if you look to the right, the Chase Sapphire Reserve, that was about a year and a half ago, they offered 100,000 bonus points. And that actually was equivalent to $1,400. And you could take that out in the form of a check. You don't have to keep them just as points. So for me, this was a very personal decision. And again, as you can see, it's all based on travel. And that's how I want to maximize my credit cards. We're going to look at credit scores, and I'm going to break some of these areas down. So when you think of your credit score, it could be a number ranging from 4 to 8 to 850, depending on the credit bureau that's reporting it. So it's based on the amount owed. How much do you owe, and how much of your credit limit have you used? And that's 30% of your credit score. If you look to the right, payment history. Do you pay on time? And if not, how late were you? And recently I was speaking with a colleague, and she said, I've always been taught if I'm going to be a day or two late, I call the credit card company, give them the heads up, they note the account, and they will most likely not report it to the credit bureau. And that's a great thing. So be really aware that if you do happen to be a day late, give them a call, let them know what happened, and pay it immediately. And we're going to move on. So hits and inquiries. You may have heard these terms. They may have never been taught very directly, but just to give you some good insight. A hard inquiry is when somebody needs to make a lending decision, and that will have a little bit of an impact on your credit score. A soft inquiry is when someone really wants to just get more information in terms of a background check, and that's a soft inquiry, and it doesn't necessarily affect your credit, but it will be reported on your credit report. So I thought I'd give you some insight. So for those of you right now who know your score, you can kind of see where you stand in terms of age and also in terms of New Jersey. And so in New Jersey, the average credit score is 671 points. And that's a pretty good credit score. So thinking about this, you may be saying, I could do better, or maybe I'm a little ahead of the game. And something I want to highlight is you don't have to wait until 60 or 50 to hit the 700s. If you want to focus now and make changes, you absolutely can do that. I was able to change my credit score by 120 points in about a year and a few months. So it's absolutely possible, and a lot of that has to do with reviewing your credit report to know what's there and what you could be doing better.
Jill, I
I
just
thought
want to
I'd
highlight
share.
a couple of questions, if I
Yeah.
can. So someone did ask how you can check your credit. I know you're going to get to that shortly. And then another person has asked, how many credit cards should a person have open?
That's a really great question. Like I shared earlier, I started out with 5 in college, and that was way too many. I have personally gone down to 2, but it's more about how much credit you have. So, for example, if if you have 2 credit cards and they're offering you 50,000 in a credit limit on both, that's $100,000 of equity that you can use. And I think that's a really high amount, but think of it in terms of what's the point of having 5 small cards offering $2,000 each when you can have 2 and increase those limits every few years. So my best practice is, for me, 2, 3 at the most.
Great, thank you.
So just to give you a little bit of insight, and everyone here, varies in age, but 24% of 18 to 34-year-olds surveyed would be inspired to improve their credit if they had regular access to their credit, to the credit score. I think that's a strong statement. I think, and I started by saying this, the more aware we are of our credit score and our credit report, the better the chances that we can make changes. And also, if you look below, 2 in 5 millennials, which is 38%, have subprime credit. So the lack of credit score transparency could be holding many back. And so part of the purposes of this presentation are to give you that awareness, to give you the tools, and we will talk more about credit reports and credit scores. So what is your score? So if you look at these 4 areas, it will give you outlets to find your credit score. The one I want to highlight is, first, start with your credit card issuer. So for example, my JetBlue card through Barclays, it offers me a free FICO score every month. So all I have to do is go onto my app. It says, do you want to see your free FICO score today? And it shows me the changes in my credit score, and it changes monthly. And it may only be by 1 or 2 points, but what's nice is it also tells you what's impacting it. Why has it increased, or why has it decreased? But definitely start to look for ways to access your score. And just to give you a visual, if you were to use Credit Karma, which I'm going to talk about in the next slide, this is what it may look like, and these are not my scores. But what I like about this, it says what has changed, and this is a clickable link to let you know what's changed, when it was updated, and when the next update will be. And also note that they're coming from 2 different agencies, and so sometimes these scores may vary. So Credit Karma, I think, is a great tool. It's free. I've changed my opinion on this. I remember when it first came out, and I thought, wow, they're coming up with their own scores, credit scores. What's the purpose of that? And so I steered clear of Credit Karma until recently. Now Credit Karma is giving you free scores, free access. They will help you monitor, they'll give you insight, and they'll help you make better credit decisions. And the last thing I want to highlight with them is they're going to give you resources. So if you're curious about unclaimed money, for example, they actually have a resource for that. The one thing I do want to let you know how it's free, because I think that's important, they're going to be showing you ads, and they're going to email you offers. So be really cautious when you sign up. While it's all free, and I do believe that, just look out for those ads. So we're going to take another poll. How many of you believe you may have negative factors impacting your credit score? So take a look to the right.
Great. And Jill, while folks are answering this poll, maybe we can just address a couple of questions that came in. They were all
Sure.
pretty much on the same wavelength of closing credit cards. If you close a card, is it bad for your score? Does your credit score go down if you close or cancel a credit card? And is it wise to cancel them if you have a lot of cards with no balance? So what's your take on closing out a card?
Those are really great questions, and I agree. I think if you're going to close cards, do it very strategically. So first, think about, when did you open it? And if it was recently, within the last 2 years, I would say maybe wait. And that's just my personal rule of thumb. You can always ask the financial advisor as well. The other thing I would do immediately is pay off those balances. So I do have 2 department store cards that I opened maybe about 3 years ago that I haven't wanted to close, but I paid them off in full. And I'm just waiting one more year because it is showing that I have more equity because I have open lines of credit with them, but I don't want to close them too soon. So I guess I would say a good rule of thumb is between 2 and 3 years really to close them. But if you're not using them, pay the balance off and then make a decision.
Great, thank you. And so now I'm sharing the poll results, as you can see, about negative factors impacting the credit score. Most people say yes, and then about half of the group says yes, and the other half is split between no and not sure.
Great. So what the next parts of this webinar will include are how we're going to address potential negative factors. So we're going to start with increasing your credit score, and there's a lot of bullets here. I'm going to highlight a few of them. First, to increase your credit score, pay off all credit cards and bills on time. And again, try to use auto pay. And I think for some, this is asking a lot, but really make an effort to pay on time. And if you don't feel comfortable with auto pay, because I know some people aren't, set a reminder in your calendar, wherever that is, to pay it on time. I think this is a lesson I learned the hard way. And I remember right out of college, I just let those bills go because I didn't think I had the funds to pay them, but it would have been worth it even to pay the minimum, which was $25 a month. The next thing I want to highlight, never apply for too many cards. So right now it sounds like some of you are thinking, maybe I have too many. Should I close a few? Honestly, it's really up to you, and I would start with a tool like Credit Karma to decide how many credit cards are too many, and that website, Credit Karma, will also give you some insight and tools to help you make that decision, but never apply for too many cards. For example, I applied for my JetBlue card when it was still with American Express, and I believe that was somewhere around 7 or 8 years ago. But I only applied for the Chase Sapphire Reserve card a year and a half ago because of the sign-up bonus. So again, do it strategically and never apply for too many. The next bullet I want to highlight is call the credit companies to request lower interest rates. And on that note, I also want to say you can also ask for a higher limit. So you can always say, I've changed careers, or I have a new salary, I've been promoted, or you can just call and say, hey, listen, I'd like to stick with your Citi card. However, the interest is 22%. Can you bring it down to 18%? You can actually negotiate that, and a lot of people aren't aware of that. So I'm going to show you a term just because I think it's important for those of you who are making larger financial decisions down the road, debt-to-income ratio. And so the 43% debt-to-income ratio is really important because it's going to help lenders decide how to measure your payments that you make every month and then to repay the money you've borrowed. And I'm going to show you an example. So for example, if you're paying $1,500 a month for your mortgage and another $100 for an auto loan plus $40 a month for the rest of your debt, your monthly debt payments come out to $2,000. If your gross monthly income is $6,000, then your debt to income ratio is 33%. And that's the math that you want to do. And math has never been my strength, but this is a pretty simple example that is easy to follow. You want to make sure that you're under 43%, especially if you're about to apply for a mortgage or look for a mortgage with a mortgage broker. So I know I'm getting down to a lot of details, but I want to give you some more insight to these 4 areas. It may be a little hard to read, so I'm going to read the numbers for you. If you look at the mortgage rates at the top, excellent credit, they consider 760 to 850. That person's getting an interest rate of 3.2%. But if you look to the far right, somebody with bad credit under 620 is paying 4.8%. And you can see the difference in cost, $233,000 versus $283,000, and that's a pretty big difference. The same for the auto loans. If you were to look at excellent credit, they're considering that to be 720 and up, and that person's going to have an interest rate of 3.4 versus somebody with bad credit. Their interest rate is 14%, and that's a difference of about $9,000. And you can do the same with insurance and credit cards. So having high credit and excellent credit is really critical because these 4 areas are always going to be based on that. So I know this came up, and I think it's really important that you start by getting that credit report. And so one thing, if you may not know this, you're entitled to a free copy of your credit report every year. And so it's going to be from Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, all 3. You want to read those reports in detail. And I remember when I did my last one about a year ago, every report was somewhere around 8 to 10 pages. And so it took me quite some time, but it tells you how many payments were late, how many days you were late, what your total, how much you owe on your student loans. It tells you everything. And if you look to the right, 1 in 5 consumers actually found that they had an error that was corrected by a credit reporting agency. So 1 in 5 of us actually could have errors, and they were actually corrected. So I know we're going a little bit quick, but I want to get to what errors you should now look for. Identity, incorrect account status, data errors, balance errors. These 4 areas are typically what we're going to find wrong on our credit reports. But unless you look, nobody is going to correct them. And there are ways to get through having them fixed. So where do you start? So first, you want to dispute the information with the credit reporting reporting company. For example, TransUnion. You would go directly to TransUnion's website, submit a claim, and dispute the error, and you'd give them all of the information that you have. Step 2, you can also go directly to the company who provided the information, like Visa, and that's also available typically on those websites, or you can always call them. And I want to highlight this at the bottom. Credit reporting companies must investigate your dispute. So don't think that just because you're disputing it, nothing's going to happen. They have to actually investigate it. So let's get to another poll before we transition into savings. So do you have a savings account? Please see the poll on the right.
All right, we'll give folks just another minute or so to answer this one. It's our last poll for the webinar. Don't forget you can submit your questions. Thanks to anyone who has chimed in so far. We appreciate it. All right, and let's see the results here. So yes, it looks like most folks here do have a savings account, Jill.
Excellent. So, and please know the reason we're asking these questions is so that we can kind of gauge, going forward. But I'm going to give you some good information about savings accounts in case maybe you have the savings, but you're not happy. I know when I first started savings, I had walked into Bank of America and they said, hey, do you want to open a savings account, a money market account? And I said, sure. And I was earning 0.02% on my savings. And that is pennies. And now I'm saving 1.65% with American Express. So I took a screenshot of the website, and I'm not here to promote any particular vendor at all, but this is my personal savings account. So you can look at this little graph they have. With American Express personal savings, and this is just one example of many, they're offering 1.65% return on your money versus the national average of 0.08, and that's a significant difference. The reason I chose American Express for my savings, it's FDIC insured, which you always want to make sure of. They have a higher APY than most, and they have what they call a health rating of an A. And lastly, it's very easy to transfer funds between my checking and my savings. So how do you find one? And it sounds like most of you already have one, but take a look at these factors the next time you want to decide your savings account options. So first look at what's the interest. And I would imagine many of you do have those lower APYs right now, but take a look and consider transferring your money to another bank. Maybe that you can get a higher return on your money. And also if you look to the bottom, and I'm going to talk about CDs in a second, but consider a certificate of deposit versus a standard savings account. CDs are great options, but they're not for everybody. It's just another option for you. Something I'll highlight, but I won't go into detail, is there are banks versus credit unions. I chose banks personally for my funds, but mostly because of technology. I personally love having the app. I like the easy access. I like the service I receive. So I've personally chosen a bank over a credit union. However, many of you may be saying, why not go for the not-for-profit? Let's go for a credit union. And if you're connected to a credit union, that's absolutely a great option. So CDs, and I won't go into too much detail. I just wanted to give you this as an option. These are, and hopefully the website will work for us, certificates of deposits. So what I did was I put in the Montclair zip code, and it's saying if you were to put in a deposit of $5,000 over 5 years, and remember with CDs, you're locked in 6 months to 5 years, it gives you the option. So for example, Marcus by Goldman Sachs has a requirement of 5 years. The balance has to be 500, but you're going to earn 2.9%. And if you remember the American Express example, that was 1.65. The downside, and the reason I personally do not have CDs, is because I don't want my money to be locked in for 5 years. But maybe you're comfortable with 2. So then you can easily change this to 2 and see, hey, if I can commit 2 years, $5,000, I'm going to earn 2.45. And that's really not that much of a difference to the 5-year. So these are great options, and I like to present them so that you have the information, but it's really more about you.
Jill, on that note, if I can just chime in, we have another question from a participant, and this might be a question that's geared more towards someone's financial advisor, but maybe you can just briefly speak to the difference between money market and regular savings.
That's a really great question. I think for me, I've always been told money market and savings are very, very similar. I believe the difference may be just the interest that you're earning, but that is a good question for a financial advisor.
Great, thank you.
And you all have great questions. So I'm going to give you a little bit of additional savings info, and I'm not going to highlight everything, but some of you may be here because you're wondering, how much should you be saving? And I remember as a young professional, I said to my supervisor, how much do you save and how much should I be saving? Because I think this is a common question. So I found a pretty helpful statement, and this is a link that you'll have access to a really helpful article. But someone making $35,000 a year who saves $5 a day, which is right now kind of about the cup of coffee, is only 5% of your income. But if I were to say to you, why don't you save 5% of your income, you may say, wow, that's way too much. But really, when we break it down to simple math, and again, I'm not a math person, it makes more sense and it feels more feasible. So maybe instead of stopping at Starbucks every morning, you're putting that $5 in your pocket or into savings. But this is just good insight. But how much you should be saving is really up to you. There's a lot of research that I did that came up with 20% of your gross income is what you should save, and I feel like that's a little high. But if that's the normal rule of thumb, that may be helpful for many. And I'm going to talk about this bullet too, because it's another great way to save. It's the stock investment. If you have stock investments, they increase your risk of losing money, but they offer a much higher return on investment. So instead of doing a CD recently, that option, I chose to invest in Apple. And I waited for the dip. It hit about 161, and I invested some of my funds in Apple. It was risky. I was actually advised against it from my own advisor. However, I wanted to take the risk, and I felt confident in what I knew about the stock market. And now Apple is at, I believe, $162 today. But again, high risk, but a much higher return on investment. So you have to do what you're comfortable with. And the last thing I'm going to highlight, and these are slides that you'll receive on the right in the PowerPoint, but I'm not going to review, Roth IRAs versus traditional IRAs. These are savings account where you can put away $5,500 per year, and it's based on tax savings. You either save on the front end or after you retire, but those slides will be in the slideshow for you. So how do you decide? I think you've been given a lot of information, especially about savings and credit cards, how do you make a decision? And for me, my number one, and I started this, is forecasting. I'm thinking 7 years ahead, and I'm still thinking about today, but I'm trying to decide, where am I going to be? What am I going to need along the way? And so I'm always thinking about what's going to come next, and that's how I make my personal savings and credit decisions. Second, really think about what matters to you most. So maybe some of you are entrepreneurs, or you want to be an entrepreneur. So maybe you have to start a savings account for that seed fund when you eventually get your business up and running. If that's what's most important to you, then start a savings account where you can bring that off the ground one day and get your ideas to life. And the third, look at the financial health rating of your bank. And this is also a clickable link. So you could easily click the link and type in Bank of America, and you're going to get a rating of A all the way down to F to see how your bank is doing health-wise. And for me, that's also how I checked or selected my personal savings bank. So you're going to see a lot of these, and I can tell you through doing all of this research, I'm getting more and more ads now because of Google. These are ads, and something I want you to be really aware of is when you start to search, look for these keywords like sponsored or this is an ad, whatever they may say. And this is just a screenshot, but what I found was underneath this was actually higher APYs, but they were not sponsored ads. So always look through these lines and make sure you're really getting the best deal, and be really careful of what's in front of you. However, I do want to say, if you can find a healthy chart like this that does not have sponsored all over it, having the health rating, the APY, the minimums and maximums is a really, really great thing. So if you can find this, you'll see this in a lot of the links I provided at the end of our webinar. So, and again, you'll come back to this. This is also a live link. Determine how much interest you could be earning. And so this is a tool that you can slide between, if it's 1 year of savings at $5,000, what would I earn? And it's helpful to see. When I look back, I actually wish I started saving sooner, because if I look back 10 years ago, I probably could have had several $1,000s more had I made different financial decisions. So what I've come up with is a really simple way to wrap this presentation up: the formula to financial success. So first, establish credit strategically. And I say strategically because you really have to think about, what cards do I want? What am I going to do when I go to buy a home? What if I want to refinance? What if I need to consolidate my student loans? You want to establish that credit very carefully and strategically. Then you also want to manage credit with a plan. And I say a plan because I think it's important to think about credit as any other part to our life. If we want to increase our credit score, or if we want to manage our credit cards, we have to have a plan to do so. And then you want to always monitor and manage your score. And so, like I shared, on my app through JetBlue for the Barclays card, I can see my score every day if I'd like. And I can also see what's influencing it to go up or what's influencing it to go down. And I can make changes as needed. In addition, that free annual credit report that we're all given is critical. Always mark that on your calendar as a date that you're always going to get my credit report. And those links are also going to be in the resources page. And lastly, save where you're comfortable. And I mean save the money you're comfortable saving, but also in a place that you are comfortable. So maybe it's a CD. Maybe you're sitting here saying, you know what, I could save $5,000 over 2 years for that higher return on my investment. Or maybe you're saying, I don't think I can do that, but I will start with $20 a month. Wherever you're comfortable, do it. And if it's cash on the side versus a savings account, just be strategic in how you do that, but save where you are comfortable. And for me, that gives you more control over your money. And I've found that doing this has led me to have more control financially. I've become more financial literate, and I'm also more aware of what I need to do in the next 7 years to increase my credit score and become a better person financially in terms of my own success. So I want to share these resources with you right now, but they're also already ready for you in the PDFs on the right-hand side. And I want to thank you. I know it's hard to sit there and listen to a psychology major, both my degrees are in psychology, give you advice financially, especially knowing that some of you may be in finance, but this was meant to be really basic, informational, and to kind of just get you a foundation. But again, I do recommend working with a financial advisor, a CPA, or an accountant if you have questions in detail. But you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and you can always email me at ploskanka@montclair.edu, and thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jill. I think I speak on behalf of everyone when I say thanks for sharing some of the things you might have learned the hard way, but I know you're very well versed in this. So thank you for sharing real life pros and tips and not trying to sell anyone on anything. I think hearing it from someone who's been through it, a fellow graduate and colleague at the university, is really helpful. We do have just a few more questions to go through. Do you recommend any CPAs or financial folks? I mean, again, not that you're promoting anyone, but maybe a good place to start finding one. How do you know someone's trustworthy?
You know, I do have names, and if anyone is interested, I would say start with emailing me. But if you're the person like me who wants to do your own research, I would honestly start with a website that may rate people. I think other people's reviews and ratings are really important when we look for advice in someone. Or I know even at the university, we have a chain. If someone is curious about where can I find the best plumber, they send it out and they get a ton of feedback. I would start with your colleagues. But if anyone wants personal recommendations and I receive no commission, please feel free to email me and I'll give you some great names.
Great, thank you. And I agree, word of mouth is always helpful recommendations. And someone else also asked about getting the free credit report. I know you did mention in there how to get the report, so we can address that by sending out the slides, unless you want to maybe just circle back. Yeah.
No, that's perfect. I just want to highlight where it will be. There's a lot of resources here. As I built this slideshow, I wanted to get you everything I was finding that I found helpful, but it's the last one, and all you have to do is click it. It's the annual free credit report.
Great, thank you. It looks like that's all of our questions. So again, folks, thank you so much for joining us, the first of our summer series, Adulting 101. Please do take the poll, or part in the survey that will be sent to you so that we can continue to craft these great webinars for you. And thank you again to Jill.
Thank you all, and thank you all for being here with us for today's webinar.
Thank you all. Take care.